Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Rejuvenate Edition 4. I have a very special guest here with me today. His name is Brian Pang. He is currently in Vancouver, Canada. He is the product director for electronic arts. So I know a lot of our audiences who are youths here are getting very excited already. But don't worry, I've already asked him for the free copies of FIFA 2022. And he did say that he'll send it over by mail. I'm just joking, Brian.
I got free codes.
Welcome
for
to the
you.
show.
Free codes.
Welcome to the show, Brian.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, again, I don't want to go into details as to what you do in EA. So I suppose I will pass the time over to you right now, and maybe you can then do a more justified introduction about yourself.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Andrew. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying this Rejuvenate conference so far. My name is Brian. Pronouns are he, him. And I'm speaking to you from the unceded traditional and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, which is also known as Vancouver, BC, and Canada. Andrew, thank you for inviting me to speak here and to be a part of this amazing Rejuvenate webinar. You have an all-star set of speakers, many of whom I am in awe at. Special shout out to Melissa, who opened the conference this morning, and also Siobhan, who will be speaking tomorrow, both of whom I've met through Clubhouse. And really kudos to you, Andrew, and the Synapse team for creating this wonderful space, and all the other incredible speakers as well. And I also want to thank the audience. Thank you for attending. Again, hope you're staying safe and healthy and taking care of yourselves. I'll do a super quick intro here. So I work at Electronic Arts, as Andrew mentioned, as a product director. I've been with EA since 2004. And as Andrew also alluded to, we're launching a game called FIFA next week. I also serve as the global board chair for EA's Asian Employee Resource Group and also our Indigenous Affinity Group. What I do at EA is I help empower tech, art, content, and marketing teams to deliver amazing games and interactive experiences to inspire the world to play. And also through my ERG and outside of work, I advocate, uplift, and help advance marginalized and underserved communities in the workplace and beyond through volunteering at various nonprofit organizations, serving on some leadership boards as well, and also a few community groups. Okay, this wasn't quick, but one more little tidbit. I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and I lived in Hong Kong until I was the age of 16. Then I moved to Canada with my parents when I turned 16, just before the Hong Kong handover in 1997. I have been lucky enough to visit Malaysia twice in the past 5 years. First time I was in Kuala Lumpur, and last year, right before the pandemic hit, in January, I was on a cruise. But again, I'm honored and privileged to share some thoughts with all of you here today.
So Brian, before we go into the other portions that I'm obviously very interested to speak to you today, I suppose just out of curiosity, how did you land yourself in EA, Electronic Arts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say Electronic Arts is probably my only real career, my real job. Right after university. Okay, let me start from the beginning. So throughout my youth, I was very fixated on becoming an astrophysicist. And I studied my entire youth in astronomy and physics and all that stuff. And in university, I think in my third year, just before the start of my third year, I decided to pivot. So I graduated with, instead of a science degree, with an arts degree. And I wasn't sure what I would be doing for a career after I graduated. So I started working at a call center, which it wasn't for me. It wasn't the right job for me. It definitely paid decent at the time, but I took a leap of faith and I applied for a job at EA. I didn't know we had an EA in Vancouver because I didn't grow up in Vancouver. But obviously, a lot like most men my age, we grew up playing a lot of EA games. I took a leap of faith. I applied for an entry-level position. I landed the job, and I gave myself 1 year to, move up, learn, get some experience. And if I wasn't progressing in my career after that first year, I said I would go find a real job. But I've been there for 18 years. I've been really lucky. I think I've worked hard, had really great teammates, really great managers, worked on some amazing products, great initiatives. And I'm pretty safe to say that I have a good career at EA after 18 years.
Amazing. 18 years is really no joke these days, to be in with one company in that sense. Now, perhaps just a little bit, a little sneak peek into what you do at EA, right? Of course, you gave a brief overview of what exactly do you do, but I suppose give us a very typical day to day.
Sure.
How do you do? I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, no, I can give a bit of an overview, and we can kind of zoom in a little bit. So what I essentially do is I'm a product and operations leader. I call myself a servant leader because I'm here to serve my team, and I'm supporting my team. And that's the philosophy that I have as a leader, someone in a leadership role. And so what I do is I serve my teams through program planning, through the product design portions of the project, and throughout the entire development phases, and all the way through launching the products, and also supporting the live service of the products. In addition to what I do there on the product side, I'm also a people leader, which means I'm responsible for managing several team members' careers. And I'm there to support them and serve them in everything that they need to succeed. I'm also a career coach, a mentor, sponsor, career sponsor, and I help other people that don't necessarily report to me or don't even work on the team that I support. And in addition to that, part of my operations role is I also work on efficiencies, both in our process or our technology, the design as well, how we do things. And I focus a lot as well on internal and external partnerships. So we have external business partners and development partners. Some of them are in KL as well. And we also have internal partner teams across the globe. Within EA, we have 40 different studios across 5 different continents. So there are a number of people and teams that we have to interact with to deliver a game. And a little bit of insight, making a game is almost like making a movie. When you watch a movie and you watch the end credits, right? If anyone's watched a Marvel movie, they'll see all the end credits. There are a lot of people involved in making a movie. Well, just like that, it's also a lot of people involved in making a game. So if you have a video game, a HD AAA title, take a look at the credit screen and you'll see what I'm talking about. But yeah, in addition to that, I'm also helping to drive a variety of inclusion and diversity work across all our business units across the EA company.
And that's where Aspire comes into the picture, correct?
Exactly. Yes. Aspire is the Asian ERG.
Sorry, go ahead. What tell us what is Aspire and what is its role and function like within the EA framework or network?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak about Aspire. It is my true passion. And first, I'll tell you what an employee resource group is for those who may not know. So an employee resource group, which I will call ERG from here on. And ERG is usually a volunteer group led by employees within a company who typically share commonalities such as an ethnicity or gender or generations or neurodiverse, abled, or interests such as mental and physical wellness, environmental social governance, and other things. Now, ERGs primarily exist to provide diversity and inclusion and belonging support for employees. And also there's a secondary function, which is to enhance career and personal development, professional networking opportunities. And usually ERGs are aligned with the company's values, mission, vision, mission, and objectives. I think I saw a stat recently that 90% of Fortune 500 companies have ERGs. I think recently what we've seen with ERGs is ERGs are also now think tank mechanisms. And what that means is, ERGs help drive business objectives. Some examples here include things like corporate branding. And to dive into that is how attractive is the company brand for the consumers of the, the product or the industry, or even prospective and existing employees, and even business partners. Do businesses want to partner with these companies? So ERGs really help with the brand image and the desirability of working with a company or consuming the company's products. So that's what an ERG is. I'll talk a bit about what EA's focus is, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. Ultimately, these are my opinions, so I have to say that. But EA, like most companies, we definitely focus a lot on social impact, and specifically around partnerships with nonprofit organizations, doing good in the community, company outreach, volunteerism, things like that. We also focus on our business innovation, which is the products that I mentioned, the games, the stories, the art, the tech, making sure those are inclusive and representative appropriately. And also our workforce, ensuring that we have a diverse talent pool of employees. We have groups that support them, and also product and marketing positioning, and also our player communities. So we have such a large player community, which I can talk about later, that we see a lot of potential there to drive inclusion and diversity through our stories and our games. Something else we focus on is professional development. Most ERGs do this as well. So this is where we engage our leadership teams in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. But then we also cultivate and develop leadership capabilities in our community. And that's through mentoring, coaching, networking, all that stuff. And then last but not least, the other focus we have as a company is overall employee experience. So are we ensuring that our workforce feels inclusive or is inclusive and has a belonging culture? Are we fostering allyship as well across our workforce and our communities? Okay, now drilling down into Aspire. So we obviously are aligned with the company's values, but our mission is to really elevate the visibility and also expand the representation of Asians and Pacific Islander members in all facets of EA, from the workforce, our leadership, and our games and products. And so a lot of things we do are aligned with everything I just mentioned. We do focus a lot on community development, also building a strong belonging culture. We also focus a lot on representation, both in games and in our player communities, and also our employee engagement. So how we hire people, what happens when we hire people, how do we support our new hires, our existing hires, and driving up the satisfaction of our workforce. And something I'm really excited about, which is relevant to this group, is how are we also building products and developing communities within the Asia Pacific region. And part of that is, maybe you know, Andrew, but gaming is definitely rising in popularity in Asia Pacific. A lot of it is due to the availability now of 5G, more ubiquitous Wi-Fi. I think a lot of mobile devices are now capable of running very powerful games, rendering and lots of good processing power. The cost of a gaming device, like a cell phone, has actually come down as well. So phones are becoming much more affordable. So a lot of people are now buying devices that can play games. So I'm really excited about that.
So now, besides Aspire, your nonprofit work with Asian Leaders Alliance, Stand with Asian Americans, as well as Ascent Leadership, kind of, it's literally that whole ecosystem of what you just described earlier. I suppose how did you get yourself involved in all of this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And maybe before I talk about the
Mm.
organizations that I work with, I can maybe set a bit of context about what's happening in North America and other
Yes.
parts of the world as well. So I think and hope by now a lot of folks in the audience have heard of something called Stop Asian Hate, which is colloquially the term that a lot of us are using for the movement that's happening in North America. I'll kind of give a bit of context on what this is first. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most of us absolutely know that there is a problem in the Western world and also in Europe and in parts of Australia as well. In terms of an overview, so I would say over the past 18 months, there has been a large uptake and an escalation within these regions of xenophobia and bigotry towards the Asian communities, resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic and also some unwarranted anti-Asian rhetoric from certain world leaders and a few politicians as well, very powerful politicians. And this xenophobia and bigotry has manifested in different forms. The most obvious and visible form is physical violence, right? And I think, again, this might be a little bit triggering, but there are a lot of instances. It's all captured on video. Lots of social media outlets are posting about it, news outlets too. But the physical violence is also seems to be targeting the elderly and also Asian women. It just needs to stop. But these physical assaults are sometimes resulting in serious injuries and in a lot of cases, some deaths as well. In various hate crime trackers, we're seeing thousands and thousands of these reports in just the United States, right? It's happening on the streets, in places of business, in offices, and online as well, including through games and gaming platforms. So this year in March, in Atlanta, in Georgia, in the United States, there was a gunman who conducted a mass shooting whereby 6 of the 8 victims were Asian women. And at that time, it was not considered a targeted hate crime or ethnicity-based racism. And the lead investigator and media also blatantly did not regard the news with the same vigor as many other similar crimes. And so what that did is it caused an uproar in the Asian American community, as that was the trigger for us, right? We simply had enough of all this lack of visibility, lack of, humanity, and just it brought to light that there's consistent marginalization. And it really helped awaken what a lot of us knew all along, is that the xenophobia and bigotry has always existed, especially in North America. You know, we've had things like the Chinese Exclusion Acts to internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, and many other acts of racial and ethnic-based discrimination. And a lot of us have realized that we've actually perpetuated that because we've stayed quiet, right? We've played into the personas that we're expected to play into, right? We've played into these stereotypes. And we do this by holding on to our intergenerational values of things like, staying quiet and not being the nail that sticks out, right? The phrase is the nail that sticks out gets hammered. We've really done that in the West, in the Western world. And what that resulted in is Asians in America have always been viewed as less than, right? And Europe as well, in all facets. And these stereotypes just continue to make things worse because they're perpetuated by media, like movies and TV and comics, pop culture, and yes, in video games too. I'll talk about how that's changing in a bit. Now, here's what I'm also seeing, and a lot of us are, but the xenophobia and bigotry also manifests itself in the workplace. Right? There's a phenomenon called the Asian glass ceiling. And I also don't think this is North American specific. This also happens in Asia. But what we're seeing is in North America, we're seeing an overrepresentation of Asians in the workforce, right? So in the US, the Asian population is 6%. But in the entire workforce, Asians are 13% of the total workforce. So that shows that we're actually overrepresented in the workforce. I'll get to this in a sec. In the tech industry, it's even more pronounced because in Silicon Valley, 47% of the workforce are Asians. 47. So despite that, despite these overrepresentation numbers, the Asian community is also the most underrepresented in leadership and executive roles. So in leadership and exec roles, Asians are only 4% in Fortune 1000 companies. And for Asian women, it's far, far less than that. Okay, so about Asian American women, there's another statistic where on average, the ethnic-based group that holds the highest education level are Asian American women. But also the statistic that shows that the least likely to be promoted in the workplace are also Asian women. So that makes no sense. Now, one of the groups I volunteer with, named Ascend, they've published numerous papers about this topic, and there are also several books about the Asian glass ceiling. So it is a real thing. The data proves it. I want to zoom out just a little bit. In the Americas, when we say the word Asian, now we know this, right? I'm sure most of the audience here knows this, but the continent of Asia comprises of 48 countries, right? And also 3 special administrative regions. We also know that Asians are 60% of the world's population. But in the US, usually the statistics and the publications and the reports, it lumps all Asians into one category, right? So you might have heard the phrase, Asians are not a monolith, because that's what how the data is presented usually in the United States. And so what I'm getting at is when it's treated like a monolith, like a singular a piece of data, I'd say on average, Asians as a whole, the data shows that the Asian population is doing okay, right? From a salary perspective, like an average salary. Asians aren't the least paid ethnic group, but they're also not the most paid ethnic group, but they're doing okay. Now, here's the difference. When you desegregate the data to the individual countries of origin, it shows that Asians have the largest income disparity. So what that means is the ethnic, the population that is is from South Asia, usually have the highest pay. But then there are folks from Brunei and the Hmong community, they're the lowest paid by far. They're far below the poverty line in the United States. And there's another study that was done recently. Most people in the Americas can't even name one prominent Asian American. There was a recent survey done where the question was asked, can you name one prominent Asian American? And the name that came up the most was Jackie Chan, who is not American. and the next top answer was don't know. So that is just crazy. 60% of the world is Asian, and most Americans can't name one Asian American. So anyway, there's countless of examples of this. There's way too many to list. It is a real problem. And coming back to the media representation and also in games and TV, this is why we're so proud in America when we're properly represented in these media channels. Movies like Shang-Chi and Crazy Rich Asians, The Farewell, people coming out of the theaters crying. It's because we finally see ourselves properly represented, right? In the humans that we actually are. Also in sports, like Jeremy Lin, we all love Jeremy Lin here, and also in video games. So, okay, so this summer after March, our community really activated. And I saw real spirit, real vigor, and the community coming together here in the Americas. We all showed up for one another. We were all intentional about what we were doing. We had a deep focus on uplifting each other. People were sharing articles, personal stories. People were speaking up, being visible. These are things we never did before. There were even rallies on the streets, right? There's just this groundswell of energy and this really strong desire to drive change. And companies were paying attention too, right? Organizations were taking initiative to partner with nonprofits and all sorts of community orgs. And so this energy was, for me, it was not only inspiring, it was very therapeutic for a lot of us, right? We were all so, awakened to what was happening, and we started to understand about our own communities, our own selves, and we didn't feel alone anymore. We felt like we could talk about things, and we were going through grief at the same time, right? These shootings and all these like physical violence, all these things that we're seeing in social media and the news, it's triggering and it's disturbing, and people didn't feel safe. Even now, people don't feel safe walking around the streets. But for the first time, I really felt that our community was able to start driving some change, real sustainable change. Right? We saw the potential as a collective unit, and now many of us are stepping up. Right? We're still here. We're making ourselves visible. We're making ourselves be heard. A lot of us are developing and growing into leaders within our companies and communities. And we understand it's our responsibility, right? Because if we don't speak up, then it's going to be tough, right? We have to be the change catalysts. And we also have to sustain the energy, because we've seen a lot of movements. I know there are a lot of movements in Asia too. And usually something will happen and then there's a lot of energy, and then the energy starts to dip until the next thing
out. Yeah.
Right. We can't have that, right? That's not sustainable. So we got to keep the energy at an even keel. Yeah, something will happen. We got to react to it, but we got to keep that energy going. So we know that it's not enough, right? What we have right now is not enough. We got to keep pushing. We got to push for a better status quo for our communities. And we can't pretend that things that happen across the world aren't impacting what's happening in the Americas, and vice versa, right? Things that are happening in the Americas are also affecting the Asians in Asia. So everything's interrelated, interconnected. So we have to look at this from a global scale. Last thing I'll say on this topic is I definitely want to call out our incredible allies in the Americas, other ethnic-based cohorts, our Black brothers and sisters, our Latinx and Hispanic brothers and sisters, the indigenous communities, even our LGBTQIA2S+ community has been coming out to support us. Our disabled communities stepped up for us. We absolutely need to keep doing the same for those communities too, as Asians, because our struggles are all the same.
Yeah.
Right? Not exactly the same, but underlying they're all the same. There's discrimination and bias. So we also realize that, and we're showing everyone that Asians can be more than just Asians, right? Asians can also be LGBTQIA2S+. Asians can also be neurodiverse and more. So we are full humans. And that's something that I'm most excited about, is people are starting to realize that now, believe it or not. Are we talking about this? Oh, you wanted to hear about the organizations. Okay, so I'll tell you a bit about the organizations that I serve on. So I'll start with Asian Leaders Alliance. That is one that you mentioned. So Asian Leaders Alliance is a coalition of 250 company ERGs within North America. So there are 250 companies represented here. And we are focused on driving equity and social causes for the Asian communities across the world. Right now, we're predominantly North America, but we're looking to branch out. But this is an organization that is completely self-organizing. It's purely community-driven. It's grown organically. And we're really here to empower and unite all these company ERGs towards common goals. And how we do that is by leveraging collective resources and our knowledge to drive change. And we do that through education, through sharing of knowledge, through inviting each other to our company events where possible, and really working together to elevate our community, to uplift each other. And again, it's completely volunteer driven, and it's also free to join. We've planned a lot of large scale events, mostly to promote discussions within our communities, the Asian American communities, and also to promote leadership, personal branding, self-advocacy. We've even partnered with other orgs to hold workshops on bystander intervention. So what happens when someone's, attacking you, which is, can't believe I'm even saying it, but, there's training around that. And also, I might have mentioned this already, but self-advocacy in the corporate workspace. And really it's about the community, just growing this community of leaders and being there for each other. It goes such a long way, and it's really needed in North America because we are still very much the minority. And I've also met several of these groups based in Europe as well, which I'm very excited to partner with. And for anyone here who's listening in the audience, if you're an ERG leader or if you're a diversity, equity, inclusion professional, please do check out the Asian Leaders Alliance website. It's asianleadersalliance.com. We also have a free Slack channel. You can sign up. You'll receive all the resources that we're curating and putting together for free. There's no catch. You can also give back. We have good channels and mechanisms for you to share your knowledge. But yeah, we have a wealth of resources on numerous topics. And we have plans to develop even more content. So anyone who's in an ERG right now, your goals and your program will accelerate through Asian Leaders Alliance.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I can keep going if you want, unless you want to jump in with anything.
Stand with Asian Americans. What exactly do you do there as well?
Yes, a good question. So Stand with Asian Americans is a coalition of business leaders across North America. So while Asian Leaders Alliance is ERG driven, the Stand with Asian Americans org is business leader driven. And a series of executives and other entrepreneurs, very successful ones. And this group is focusing on similar causes, similar goals, combating racism through advocacy, education, community engagement, storytelling, and a variety of other initiatives. And what I do there is I partner with the leadership team to shape the objectives from a planning perspective. And we're also looking at developing new chapters so that we can activate at a local level as well, in addition to the national level. And I'm also co-leading with a few others our storytelling pillar. So how are we advocating our community to tell more stories and provide them opportunities and channels to tell their stories and for us to showcase those stories. So there's more to come with Stand with Asian Americans. It's very early days for this org, but I'm excited to share more at a future session, and absolutely on Clubhouse, you'll be hearing a lot about it.
Nice. Now, Brian, you mentioned a little bit about kicking racism out at the workplace. I just want to relate it back to sports as well, since you are obviously involved in the FIFA games, especially. There is this whole campaign of football players taking the knee. Marcos Alonso of Chelsea just made a comment to say that he's no longer taking the knee, but instead will point to his sleeve on where the kick out racism sign is on his sleeve. Now, that kind of tells you a little bit about what we spoke about earlier as well, fizzling out. You were talking about things that needs to be sustainable. There needs to be a sustainable way to keep this going.
Yes.
I mean, at the biggest stage of the English Premier League, a football star in a big club like Chelsea makes that sort of a statement. How do we? I mean, you and I are no stars, no pulling factor. How are we going to keep up with that if even the people who have the means to do it are saying, I'm no longer taking the knee in that sense? Or perhaps what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, thank you for raising this. It's a great question. And again, what I'm going to say is my opinion. I'm not representing EA here, but I understand. I understand his stance. The act of taking a knee before kickoff has become more of a performative action. So it's essentially losing its value and losing its meaning. I think people are just doing it because they have to do it, right? Or they feel that they have to do it. And, has it made a difference? Not really. It hasn't really changed anything. So, I personally, I support Marcos Alonso for doing something different. This is what's needed. Is someone needs to do something different. If it's doing the same thing and it's not working, that's the definition of insanity. So I like that he's taking a stand because now people are going to talk about it, right? And this is what's needed to sustain the energy. And this is why I'm involved in storytelling. And I feel storytelling is very important. If people don't do things like that and try to change the pattern, if the pattern isn't working, then we're never going to drive change. This energy will fizzle out, right? As we talked about. So by doing things like this, it keeps the conversation going. It keeps people engaged and thinking about, what does this mean? If you never did that, you and I wouldn't be talking right now about this. And, however many people are watching us when hearing this. So, by him doing that, there's a multiplier effect too, right? We're telling his story. He's telling his story. We're telling his story. And people listening to us will hopefully tell the same story to other people. So I support him in what he said and how he's reacting. And I think we should all learn from that. We've got to keep that conversation going.
Now, as we were talking, I just realized we've already got a couple of questions on the chat box, and I would like to address them to you. This is from Kwa. You mentioned people manager, responsible for people's career progression. Can you explain more on this role and how it helps the company in the long run?
Yeah, absolutely. So now I wouldn't say I'm necessarily responsible for someone else's career objectives, but what I do is I support them, right? So I give people the right nudges at the right times. I also help people understand, how they're performing. I also help my team members understand if there's things that they need to learn or develop in, if they need to upskill or reskill in certain areas. Forecasting trends in the business, like what types of skills are more valuable? Do we have those skills across the team? So it's really about making sure the team is set up for success and we have the right composition of skills, the right mix of skills. And if we don't, then how are we evolving and correcting that or fixing that or improving the situation? And a lot of that is working with our existing team members to help them upskill and reskill. So does that answer the question?
Yeah. In fact, there's a follow-up question to that as well. So it continues on to say, should more companies then adopt similar roles? I mean, and to have someone responsible for everyone's career progression within the company across the year. So I do know a lot of the MNCs and the bigger boys do have those sort of thing, career mentors and stuff like that. But I suppose just to also piggyback on his question here, I guess how easy or how tough is it to implement this sort of a structure within the company?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it too. So one thing I would always say to this topic is, and I'm very passionate about this topic too, and certainly my company's values are consistent here. But again, this is my opinion. Now, I firmly believe that the only person responsible for someone's career is that person. So I am in charge of my career. I don't expect someone else to, tell me how my career should go or help me through my career objectives and things like that. It's all up to me. So I would say that's a great philosophy from a career development perspective, is that, ultimately you're the one who's driving your career. You're the one reaching out and, engaging the right people, aligning with the right stakeholders, setting your objectives. Now, what a manager's role ideally is to be the sounding board, right? To steer and nudge and guide, but not to drive, not to take over, and not to say, here's how you should do things. I know this is a nuance. I know there are a lot of certain cultures who don't necessarily believe in that and prefer to do it the other way. It's more the authoritarian, more of the directive approach. And for me, I'm more the opposite, where this is why I call myself a servant leader, is I'm here to help my employees. I'm not here to tell them what to do, or I'm also not here to, and I'm not saying that people work for me. I'm not that type of a leader. In fact, I feel like I work for my people, right? I'm here, flip that pyramid upside down. I'm here to uplift my staff, my team members, help them succeed, do whatever I need to do to ensure that they're progressing. And again, I know that's not for everybody, but certainly that's my philosophy. And the question is, would other companies benefit? I do think so, because now you're putting more of the control and more of the empowerment into your employees' hands. And they feel a lot more ownership in terms of their success and also the success of the team and the business. So wherever possible, I think that's a good structure to have and a good working methodology. How hard is it to implement? Well, I say it depends. It depends where you are, right? What stage are you at? I think it's important to meet people and businesses where they currently are, and then drive change incrementally. So if your company is very top down, it's a proper pyramid approach where one person is at the top and giving all the instructions and directing the entire staff. Okay, it's probably gonna be really hard. But if you have more of a hybrid where your leaders and managers are open to different structures, then it's probably gonna be a bit easier. But that's a tough question to answer without knowing the specifics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, we have one last question here, and it's from Ali. Hi, Brian, great topic. What are your thoughts on internalized racism within Asians themselves? So in Malaysia, we are a multi-racial country, but racism still exists within the community.
Yes. It's a great question, Ali. Thank you for asking. I think about this a lot, and it's one of the reasons and one of the big focuses of the work that I do with my Aspire ERG, is really helping to bridge those cultural gaps, build more cultural understanding, bridge misunderstandings. And there is absolutely, I've seen this, I grew up in Asia myself, so I know there's definitely a lot of internalized racism. And a lot of the world's racism is perpetuated by that, by the internalized racism within the Asian communities. Now, it's interesting, because I mentioned we have 48 different countries in the continent of Asia and 3 SARs. We're actually racist to each other within the Asian, cohort. So this is also why I'm excited about the direction we're going in media, and in video games and movies. We're actually driving a lot more unity in the past couple of years, and I see this as a trend now. Like we're going to represent each other better. We're going to see ourselves better, right? And more humanity. We're celebrating our differences more. I know it's not perfect. I know there's still a lot of issues across the world, certainly in different nations. This past year, of course, we've seen a lot of issues, but I still feel like the trend is positive. Like we're moving upwards. We're having forums like this, right? Thank you, Andrew, for bringing us together. We have, Andrew and I met on Clubhouse, which is another global tool, a platform where we're sharing knowledge about our cultures. We're driving unity across the world. This is exactly what's needed in this day and age, right? And I feel like the silver lining of this pandemic is that we've learned to be more global and to celebrate our differences a lot more. So, as terrible as the pandemic is, to me, that is one of the few positives that have come out of it and real opportunities. So yes, there is absolutely internalized racism. It's going to take a long time, probably a couple generations, to fully resolve it. But we're starting now. So again, it's about this energy and keeping the momentum going. Let's name it. Let's point it out. Let's be allies to each other. Let's be allies within the Asian community to each other. But let's really see each other as humans and love each other, because that's the only way to drive out hate. Apologies for the sirens.
No. Now, I suppose Samuel heard the explanation about internalized racism within Asian countries and especially in Malaysia as well, and his question kind of segues towards that as well, right? How can anti-racism be taught in schools? So you in recent times, there's a lot of emphasis on in Malaysia at least, teaching students or kids financial literacy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So financial literacy, I think it's a global issue as well, taught in school. Racism, global issue, not taught in schools.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it's very sad, especially in North America. There are a lot of things that aren't taught in schools, and it isn't just the Asian experience, Asian American experience. It's the whole Black history seems to be not taught in schools. And so there are a lot of groups now that are working and pushing, and I don't know where this is going to go, to be honest. But certainly within the groups that I'm involved in, with Stand with Asian Americans and Asian Leaders Alliance, we are pushing organizations and legislation as well across North America to do more of this. I can't remember the exact name of the group, but there was a legislation passed in the state of Illinois in the US. So they will be teaching Asian American topics in school now.
Oh.
Now it's going to take a while. They have to build the curriculum, and there's funding. Okay. I think funding is the most important part. And then now it's about execution, right? So at least that bill has passed, and that's a start. But globally, I think there's a lot of work to do still. I've visited many countries during my life, and I've seen different museums. I've seen what people learn at a high level, of course. I grew up in Asia myself, so I learned a certain thing, and now after I left, I realized, hey, that wasn't entirely true, right? There's things that I didn't even know about that happened, in my own city. There are a lot of things that we just don't learn. And I think one of the positive things is we now have the internet, right? We now have a lot of search engines, and we have social media. And again, the whole globalization that I mentioned, like we have platforms like this, we have platforms like social media and like social audio, Twitter, other types of things. But we're hearing about things now uncensored, right? We're hearing about things from different perspectives, which we didn't really have 20 years ago. We only heard things that we were told. And it was hard to find the right information, but now we can. Now, it brings its own challenges, because now we run into things like ethics and algorithms, right? And we don't know what we're reading, if it's true or not sometimes.
Yeah.
But, if we're smart enough to discern that, right, and we are open-minded enough to seek multiple opinions and get that well-rounded perspective, which we all need to do, then I think we're in a much better spot with technology and the information availability. So I see that things are getting better in that sense. But again, it's also partly on us to make sure we're cross-checking facts, or we're not taking everything at face value. I've heard lots of people say something and people just walk away believing it. It's like, well, I should do your own research first. So I think that's the inherent danger. But I think overall, there's information available. That it's up to us to go find it. So,
I mean, Brian, we would love to have this conversation, going on and on, but obviously we have reached to the point where we will have to say goodbye. But before we do that, Brian, any parting thoughts? Anything at all?
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, again, thank you, Andrew, for hosting me and hosting this event. It definitely feels very impactful. You have a great lineup of speakers. I'm excited for day 2 tomorrow. And I'm very grateful. So I'm glad to have a chance to share my thoughts and to meet a lot of you here. My parting thoughts would be really lean in on loving each other. It's this world is, tough. It's really tough. This past year has been really, really tough. And there's no reason to hate, right? No one was born to hate. So let's think about our conditioning, our biases, what we're exposed to, what information we're exposed to, everything we just talked about, really. And let's make good decisions, right? Let's make factual decisions, at least based on the facts that we can see. Let's be open-minded and let's see each other. Right? Let's see each other all as humans. Let's love each other. Keep telling stories. For most of the audience, be yourselves, right? Be authentic. Try not to be what someone else wants you to be. Don't be what you think someone else thinks you should be. Be you, right? There's only one you. It's beautiful. Let people see it, right? Make it normal. People need to know that this is what life is like. This is what Asians are like. So that's my wish, is we can all just be ourselves, not have to be uncomfortable being ourselves, and start normalizing it, right? Because it's funny, we're the minority in the United States and in Canada, but we're the majority in the world, right? 60% of the world's population are Asian. So, and then the last thing I'll say here is play some video games, right? It's fun, it's engaging, it's social, and you can be whatever you want in video games, right? Games, like, there's lots of games. You don't have to play EA games, but play some games and tell your stories through those games. Like, create through those games. A lot of games can allow you to create your own content. So express yourself through games.
Amazing, Brian. You definitely have given us a true insights into what you do and what you're working on with the community. You've addressed the issues. You've properly summarized a lot of the things that we spoke about. And again, I'm very appreciative of your time. I know you are a busy man, but it's so fantastic to host you in Rejuvenate Edition 4. And we look forward to having you back in the future, perhaps, to talk about other things, to talk about, I suppose, to celebrate how we have stopped, Asian hate or something along those lines. And that's what I wish for, to be honest.
I would love that, Andrew, and really the honor and privilege is mine. So thank you for having me. And thanks everyone for listening.
Fantastic. Great. So ladies and gentlemen, we say goodbye to Brian here, but we will be saying hello to Besma Guesmi, who is in Tunisia, North Africa, in a couple of hours' time, and we will be hosting her, and we'll be talking to her about what she does in the land of Tunisia. So Brian, once again, I'll bid my farewell, say thank you to you, and bye-bye. Stay safe and take care.
Everyone.